Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I'm going to be talking about the 2006 zombie dramedy Fido. The film is set in a version of 1950s America where World War II was instead the Zombie War, a conflict between humanity and the undead, which was ultimately won by the living, at least if one considers living in sealed communities while large tracts of the country are left to the walking dead to be victory. The radiation that first caused the zombie menace still plagues the world. Anyone who dies will become a zombie unless their body is decapitated or cremated. And as you might expect, this has wrought changes to society. Funerals are now extremely elaborate and expensive, with the head having to be buried separately from the rest of the corpse. Those who can't afford to pay for this end up as flesh-eating monsters, at least until ZomCon captures them and puts them in a control collar that inhibits their hunger and renders them docile servitors. Society has thus passed all of its menial jobs, janitorial work, groundskeeping, domestic services, off to zombies. One such zombie is purchased by housewife Helen Robinson over the objections of her zombie-phobic husband Bill. Helen intends the zombie to help with all of her daily chores, but it actually ends up spending more time being a companion/pet for her young son Timmy, who gives it the name Fido. The friendship between Timmy and Fido actually seems to be affecting the zombie's behaviour. Fido protects Timmy from local bullies, and then later, when its control collar breaks down, it manages to partially control its bloodlust. While it does kill a neighbour, it doesn't harm Timmy. Of course, even a single zombie killing in a supposedly secure area will attract unwelcome attention from ZomCon. Can Timmy keep his zombie friend safe? Should he, for that matter? So the script for Fido was originally completed in 1994, but the film then languished in development hell for over a decade, until eventually co-writer Andrew Curry optioned it through his production company Anagram Pictures and set out to direct it for himself. In writing and directing Fido, Curry was self-admittedly influenced by the films of George A. Romero. I mean, realistically, it's hard not to be when you're making a zombie movie. But Curry also deliberately drew on 1950s Hollywood melodramas, the dark urban drama of Peyton Place, and even elements of the Lassie films. This film only got a limited theatrical release, though it went on to do quite well on home media. Reviews were largely positive, with praise for the satire and the practical effects, though there were some exceptions. The Village Voice, for instance, dismissed it as unfunny parody. I personally quite liked it. Fido is not a flawless movie, but I mostly found it funny when it was trying to be funny and touching when it was trying to be touching. But let's dig into the film in a little bit more detail. So, a core conceit of the film setting, as I mentioned, is that society has passed all of its menial jobs, janitorial work, groundskeeping, domestic service, off to zombies. And if the list of jobs given to the zombies sounds like those into which non-white Americans were relegated after World War II, well, I don't think that's a coincidence. The film's 1950s setting is a deliberate choice after all, and one that automatically draws up parallels of racial segregation laws and similar injustices of that period in the US, injustices that were largely ignored by the media of the time. Now, it may be a coincidence that the cast is 100% Caucasian, or at least I don't recall seeing a single Asian American or African American face. It's possible that some of them may have been covered up by grey zombie makeup. A lot of the Rohirrim in Lord of the Rings are actually women with beards on. You know, film has a lot of trickery in it. But certainly all of the living characters are portrayed by white actors. Is this a deliberate echo of the monocultural casting of the 1950s, or just another example of the tendency of casting teams to select actors of their own ethnicity? I don't know for sure, but whichever it is, the equation of zombies with non-white Americans is a potentially problematic one. After all, here the racist accusations of savagery have far more merit than they did in the real world. Zombies are flesh-eating monsters. I think it's clear that the film's heart is in the right place. It is ultimately on the side of integration and peaceful coexistence between human and zombie, and ergo, integration and peaceful coexistence in the real world. But for some people, this element might misfire. So, be aware of it going in. Your opinions of how well it does this may vary from mine. An element that I think definitely misfires, though one which is fortunately much less potentially problematic, is in the character of Helen Robinson. Helen's character at the beginning of the film, particularly her relationship with her son, seems quite different to her choices and behaviour in the latter stages of the movie. It almost feels to me like some significant development between those two was cut from the script to explain the change. Perhaps what's actually going on is just a bit of lazy, well, of course a mother will ultimately risk everything for her child cultural assumption, even if their relationship hasn't been that close or warm before that. And perhaps most, though probably not all, mothers would do that. There's probably some kind of biological imperative at work there, and certainly some socialization at work there. But one of the ironies of fictional narratives is that they often need to be more coherent and consistent than the real world. I think the movie would have profited from building out the mother-son relationship a bit more, or at least acknowledging the ultimate fierceness of her maternal instinct. Something as simple as a line like, "I may not always understand you, Timmy, but you're my son and I will do anything to protect you," would have helped. One aspect of the writing and the set and the costume design and the acting that does unequivocally work is the 1950s aesthetic. Fido doesn't just look like it's taking place in a bizarre alternate 1950s, though it does indeed look that way. It almost feels like it was made in that post-war era. There have clearly been conscious choices made in how the actors perform their lines, choices that reflect the style of TV of that period, just as the lines themselves feel like they could have been written then. I'm reminded in some ways of the movie Pleasantville, though that film was more explicitly satirizing the 1950s aesthetic. Fido obviously has its elements of satire, but they are more about the 1950s alternate society the film presents than the conventions of 1950s TV acting and writing. That said, I enjoyed this aspect of the movie a lot, and I had a good time watching Fido overall. If you're into zombie media at all, I think it's worth your time to give this movie a look. There are certainly much, much worse options out there for zombie aficionados. Next time, the first season of the Netflix series Wednesday, which features some big positives, but also some even bigger flaws. But that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you've seen Fido, let me know what you thought of it.